Thank you. God bless you, Cooper. You can go. So today is the 23rd day of November 2022. We are continuing our lectures on Nigerian petroleum law, and we are still focusing on concessions and contracts that are given to upstream concessions that are granted to oil companies in Nigeria. Just for purpose of, since we are doing the video, I'll try and do a recap. Tyler, is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Of what we have tried to do to give us some perspective that petroleum is a strategic national asset, and because it is quite strategic, governments, my daughter checking things, showing my face well. Governments tend to get a hold of it. Governments tend to regulate the sector seriously. There are regulations for virtually, very good. There are regulations for virtually every aspect of the oil and gas industry, from upstream to midstream to downstream. There is virtually nothing that you can do in the oil and gas industry without obtaining an authorization from the government, and these authorizations will come in the form of licenses, permits, approvals, leases, as the case may be. Is that okay?
Yes.
You will discover in the course of our study that the industry is heavily regulated, and one reason for that is because of the need to protect the environment. So there's the environmental aspect. If the industry is not properly regulated, to ensure that adequate safety measures are applied, we could have natural and disasters, accidental disasters. A classic example is the Gulf of Mexico oil spill that occurred in off the coast of US, that spilled billions upon billions upon billions of barrels. I don't know if I'll say billions, but millions of barrels of crude oil into the environment. And BP, British Petroleum, was forced by the Barack Obama government to deposit $20 billion in a fund before even looking at the claims of the fishermen and those persons that were affected. So there is therefore need for us to ensure that such a sector is heavily regulated. That such a sector is heavily regulated. Is that okay? Yeah, so from upstream, like I said, downstream. And so you see that even when a lease or a license has been granted to a company, for virtually everything it needs to do, it will still have to go for a lot of permits. And there are a lot of plans. You submit a plan, you have an environmental management plan, so many plans, so many permits, and all that. Now for the upstream, we also emphasize that all petroleum resources in Nigeria are vested in the government, and we emphasize the fact that this is not unique to Nigeria. It is the norm all over the world, perhaps with the exception of the United States of America, where some states like Texas allow for private ownership. Apart from that very, very tiny exception, petroleum all over the world is vested in and managed and controlled by the state level, by the state. Are you with me? The highest you can see is there could be some provision for derivation. There could be some provision that the vicinity or the area where this petroleum is extracted from will be entitled to a higher percentage or share of the profits that are made from that region. So from Brazil to Indonesia to Nigeria, derivation is a principle that cuts across many countries, particularly countries that employ or apply a federal constitution. In a tiny exception of perhaps Iraq, Iraq is not technically speaking a federation, it's more like a confederation, because we have the Kurdistan or the Kurdish aspect, what we call Kurdistan, you know, where these people are called the Kurds. They are not Arabs. and for so many years they've been fighting for independence. They've not got it. But one of the things that they do is to give the courts a high degree of control and management over their petroleum resources. But even at that, the central government at Baghdad still has significant control over the sector. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yes, good. I also try to point out that these petroleum resources that are trapped underground are usually divided into geographic parcels or blocks, which we usually call an oil what? An oil what? An oil block, yes. These petroleum resources are usually, for purpose of administration, they are divided into geographic parcels or blocks, and then the rights or licenses to explore for them are usually granted by the states. I pointed out that under the 1969 regime, these concessions or the right to explore for and produce petroleum, upstream petroleum, was granted on a discretionary basis under sections 2, 3, and 4 of the Petroleum Act. But for upstream, the focus was section 2. Sections 3 and 4 and 5 deal with downstream, and that there were no requirements or conditions such as transparency, bidding, licensing rounds, and all that. And so the Minister of Petroleum had no inhibitions other than probably his moral conscience. Are you with me? And so nothing could stop him from using that petroleum concession and giving it to his wife or spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, as the case may be. So these were some of the things we tried to establish. We looked at the advantages and disadvantages of that system. We pointed out that one of the advantages was that the government could use a petroleum concession to balance interest, particularly sectional interest and all that. But by and large, it wasn't a very, very good system, because the government tended to lose so much. You could grant a concession to a company that did not have capacity, did not have the commitment to develop the concession. I'm sorry, my dear. What happened in the past was these concessions were granted to Company A, and then Company A sold it to Company B that had capacity. So you grant the concession to Company A. Company A pays $100 million to the federal government of Nigeria, and next week, Company B sells that concession to Company C for $2 billion. A good example was the company that is owned by a man called, this man in the north, Theophilus Danjuma. Theophilus Danjuma, he has this company that was granted an oil block, and almost immediately he sold it, and he made over $500 million. That was money that should have gone to the coffers of the federal government. Are you with me? Yes, so concessions were used to satisfy political cronies, military cronies, and a lot of backhand dealings went on for long. We emphasized that the company to which, I'm just doing a recap, we'll soon jump in, so listen. Companies to which these concessions or these rights to explore for and produce oil was granted or is granted can be referred to as a concessionaire, and the right itself can be referred to as a concession. I also try to point out that the word concession is not very, very popular now, because it is reminiscent of the colonial days when oil and gas resources were exploited largely by Western companies, and that entered into concessionary agreements with third world countries at very exploitative rates. But that notwithstanding, for our own purpose, we will still use the word concession. Is that okay? So the government is granting to you a concession for a term of years to explore for and then to produce petroleum, upon which you will pay tax to the government and through whatever means. They may call it royalty, they may call it rent, they may call it tax and all that, but you pay something to the government. Another thing I emphasized was that petroleum producing countries, what we call a PPC, could elect to be involved in this oil and gas industry or may not. That for countries with Western ideologies, they tend not to be involved directly. Rather, they create an environment for third parties to compete among themselves. The role of the government in such countries is to regulate and ensure that these companies operate under a level playing field. Are you with me? But apart from these Western countries like US and Australia, Canada, as the case may be, the larger part of the petroleum producing countries of the world have tended to be directly involved. They have tended to be directly involved. They do not just regulate, but they are also involved, and they do so through what we call NOCs, national oil companies. So we could have different arrangements. In one instance, you could grant all your oil blocks in the country to the national oil company, and that national oil company will in turn, thank you Lord, so you could grant the concession to the NOC, which in turn could collaborate. Are you with me? Yes, which in turn could collaborate to what we call JVs, PSCs, production sharing contracts, ROSCs. Are you with me? Yes. The other option is to grant the concession to the NOC, and the NOC will develop that petroleum under what we call a sole risk arrangement. Sole risk arrangement, just a minute. You know my colleague? Yes, sir. You don't greet her. You don't greet the auntie. Okay, so the other arrangement is that the NOC may not collaborate, but it may go into a sole risk arrangement. Are you with me? Yes, sir. Yes, it could go into a sole risk arrangement. So all the concession, the oil block is given to the company. Usually this company, this NOC, will have a number of subsidiaries. It will have a number of subsidiaries. That is why it is called a vertically integrated company. It's vertically integrated because it is involved in upstream, midstream, and downstream. So the NOC usually will have, I've told you to ask me for some articles, you have gone to sleep. Ask me, my daughter, ask me, let me send it to the group. Okay, so the NOC will have an asset management firm, subsidiary. It will usually have a pipeline subsidiary. Are you with me? Yes, sir. It will also have an upstream subsidiary. This one is a company that produces oil, exploits for and produces. For Nigeria, it's called NPDC, Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, headquarters in Benin. It's a subsidiary of NNPC. It will also have the refining subsidiaries. So Nigeria, we have 4 of them. Port Harcourt refinery, there are actually 2 of them in Port Harcourt. We have one in Warri, then we have one where? Here's the last one. Kaduna. Good, you are afraid. Kaduna. Why are you afraid? Am I a bad man? Can we continue? So, sorry. I'm still just trying to lay foundation. So these are some of the things we could do. So, in another instance, the government can give a joint venture. When it's a joint venture, if it's a JV, the government is giving the oil block to the NOC and to a private oil company. Both of you take the oil block. It will be 60-40, as the case may be. Or the government will give the usual thing is that you give all the concessions to this company, which will now invite private companies to collaborate. In rare instances where the NOC has serious capacity, it is possible to say, all private oil companies go. We don't want to see you in our country. Those are for extreme cases. An example I gave in Brazil, yes, 1953, they passed a law called Law 2004. What that law did was to prohibit all private companies. No, don't do anything in our country. And that continued from 1953 down to 1997, when they liberalized their sector. Algeria also had a similar approach, but it was not as extreme as this. But for the most part, national oil companies collaborate with private oil companies. Let's continue, please. I talked about the traditional concession for purpose of the video. The traditional concession which occurred before we started having reforms, and this was very predominant before 1945. Some of the features of these arrangements were usually sole risk arrangements. They were granted to oil companies that were domiciled headquarters in Europe and America. They were for unusually long periods. Some of them were for as long as 88 years. And they granted these oil companies extensive rights over the mineral deposits in those concessions. The companies, for example, were free to dispose of them as they deemed fit, and they were free to explore and produce as they deemed fit. They paid minimal taxes to those governments, and the nominal rent, for example, the nominal rent of £150 was paid for a concession along with a bottle of rum. Is that okay? A good example I gave you in my recording is the Iraqi agreement with Canacquin Oil Company in 1926, where they paid 4 gold shillings per ton of crude oil produced and saved. I also told you to see the 1948 agreement between Saudi Arabia and which company? I hope I'm not entertaining myself in this class. Good. And Jetty Oil that provided for $0.55 per barrel. No income taxes were levied until 1950 under that arrangement, when it was made 50%. Okay, let's continue. And we now came to Nigeria, pointing out that for us, this has been the trajectory of our company's legislation. Basically, we had the 1914 Oil Mineral Ordinance, the Petroleum Act of 1969, and the Petroleum what now? Industry Act, of which year? Good. So I said all of that to bring us here that under our current regime, the government is now saddled with a responsibility to grant these concessions to oil companies. Is that clear? Yes. Doctor, I'm checking that thing is working. I just want to be sure. I'm going to put it on YouTube. That's why I'm taking a recap. You understand? Yes. And let me capture your faces. For purpose of the recording. For purpose of the recording. Morning, Henry. Are you doing this course?
I was doing it, sir.
Okay. Okay. Yes. But you were not in my former class.
I was.
Today?
Yes, sir.
It's okay. That is how it should be. My daughter, remove your hand. There's nothing to be shy. You are going international now. We are moving you from being a local champion. Come and be sure that this thing, my face is showing. Is it okay? Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Can we continue, please? So I told us that in Nigeria, the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 brought in a lot of reforms. We cannot exhaust all of them in a single class. That is why in a single class we can only run through the overview. But as we start to study the Act, we begin to see so many details and improvements as the case may be. Among other things, Section 70 of that Act, first of all, Sections 68 and 69, we are now looking at upstream. We are now coming to our upstream as far as this Act is concerned. And if we are looking at upstream, the first place to start is Section 68. 68 of the Act brings us to the so the administration, so we have part 2. Just a minute, please. So chapter 2 of the Act deals with administration. You remember? Yes. Chapter 1 deals with governance and institutions. Chapter 3 deals with what? Good. And 4 deals with taxation and all that. Good. So now this chapter 2, part 1 of chapter 2 now deals with general administration and outlines the general objectives of the chapter of chapter 2. The general objectives of this chapter 2. In summary, the aim is to ensure that we sustainably administer our petroleum resources. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Among other things, it aims to promote the exploitation of petroleum for the benefit of Nigerians, to promote the efficient, effective, and sustainable development of the industry, the safe and efficient operation of the transportation and distribution infrastructure, and to provide a framework for developing third-party access arrangements to petroleum infrastructure. Others include to encourage and facilitate local and foreign investment in the industry, promote transparency and accountability in the administration of petroleum resources, and where appropriate, to develop competitive markets for the sale and distribution of petrol. So there are quite a number of them. When you have your time, please do look at the section 66 of the Act. Are there questions? Are there questions? Okay. Yes, my daughter.
So my question is regarding the OEL.
Yes, dear.
So you stated that in the OEL, the company just have to explore.
Yes.
You don't have to be ready. You must not be the oil of the
No. Even if they see, they cannot take away.
So in cases where they don't win at all, and private companies are just there for the profits, what do they stand to gain?
You have lost now. That's why it's given to you for just 1 year. Go and explore. If you explore and you're able to see oil, come back to us. We'll give you, we'll reward you by giving you a license called Petroleum Prospecting License. But if you don't see anything, then bye bye. It's just 1 year. That was the arrangement then. Good. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so I told us that for purpose of petroleum administration, petroleum is divided into parcels called what? Blocks. Excellent. So you want to look at section 69 of the Act when you have time, that deals with what they call the national grid system. National grid system. National grid system. Okay, so for purpose of your recording and your notes, let me just read what I have here. In order to effectively administer Nigeria's petroleum acreages, the Upstream Commission or Upstream Regulatory Commission shall, in consultation with the Surveyor General of the Federation, adopt a national grid system. It is also required to establish a system for numbering parcels, which must allow for the subdivision and aggregation of parcels The Commission may further subdivide parcels into equal units of 1 hectare or such subunits as it deems appropriate. So I just felt I should point that out again. Okay, good. So let's now jump in to. So I pointed out that under the old regime, the minister, by virtue of Section 2, was authorized to issue OELs, OPLs, and OMLs. I also explained why we use the word oil and not petroleum. Why, Tarila?
Because the petroleum, the act was focused on mainly oil. So even though it talked about gas,
yes,
it did not really focus on gas.
Excellent. Good point from an intelligent man. So that was then, but we're trying to correct that because we have now discovered that Nigeria is a gas province with a little oil. So you cannot be a gas province with a little oil and your focus is on oil. Secondly, the countries of the world, the developed countries of the world, our masters, in quotes, those people that lead us and we follow, they are moving away from oil. So we cannot be focusing on crude oil when the people you are following are moving away from it. So now there's focus on gas because they have discovered that gas is a cleaner fuel. Are you with me? Even though it is a fossil fuel, it has been discovered that it is cleaner than crude oil. And we have so much of it, to power our cars. You can power cars with gas, you know that? Yes, and recently, my brother, Timmy Principal, was trying to move us to gas-powered cars. He was very serious about it, but it's like they have reduced that tempo and all that. So the first authorization to be granted, like we pointed out, is the PEL, Petroleum Exploration license. So it's granted to an oil company for how many years?
1 year.
No, man. 3 years. 3 years with an additional possibility period of 3 years. Is that so?
Yes.
Yes. So the PEL is the first that can be granted in this our country. And like I said, it's non-exclusive. So you can give 2 or 3 companies a PEL over the same area. Their role is to go and explore for this resource. Is that also?
Yes.
If they find oil, then they come back to us, and almost invariably we will be obligated to grant them a petroleum prospecting license. So let me just run through what I have here again. The Petroleum Exploration license entitles its holder to carry out petroleum exploration operations within the license area, but on a non-exclusive basis. Very important. It's granted for 3 years, and it may cover an area that includes the area of a PPL or PML. Did I point that out?
Yes.
Yes, so even when a PPL has been granted or a PML, they will still be doing exploration because a PPL, the area covered by a PPL or an OML or a PML may be very, very vast. They may have discovered oil in point A, B, and C. While they are producing there, they may still be exploring for oil in D, E, and F. Are you with me? Yes, but they may be so focused on this area where they are producing that they may not be exploring for it. The exploration may not be very strong. And so the government wants to increase its reserves. And so the government is always excited about exploration. And so they can give 2-3 companies exploratory rights over the same area, just to emphasize that. Again, to point out that the aim of the PEL is to gather data, conduct seismic operations, and then gather what? Data. Conduct seismic operations, gather data on information relating to whether or not there is petroleum in that place or not. When he has finally concluded his work, the PL holder, the license holder, if he discovers that there's oil in point A, B, and C and D, he will get back to the commission with the data, because his role is to gather data and say, from my seismic investigations, I think I have found oil that will be worth prospecting for. Now I'm asking you to give me a license to prospect for this oil. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, so when he approaches the commission may now grant it a petroleum prospecting license, provided he has complied with the terms under which it was allowed, it was prospecting. Because when you start to prospect or explore, you will be required also to comply with a number of these obligations, and most of them are geared towards safety. Is that also? Yes, so if you have been very callous in the way you carried out your operations, even though you have got data and you are now applying for a PPL, the commission may, for those reasons, refuse to recommend to the Minister of Petroleum that you should be granted this concession. Again, just to point out that for the PL, it is the commission that grants it. Did I point that out?
Yes.
Yes, it's not granted by the minister, but by the commission. And the commission has sole rights and title over any acquired raw and interpreted data obtained by the PL holder, but the holder may do what? May grant what?
Third party.
Yes, good. That data has obtained, he may grant it to third parties and collect money from them. Yes, he may commercialize it, but in doing so, he must obtain what? Permission from the commission, which permission is not to be unreasonably withheld. And apart from that, he will share the money he will share some of the money with the commission. Again, in conclusion, geological, geophysical, or geochemical surveys for scientific or educational purposes in relation to petroleum will not require a PEL. If you want to just do geophysical or geological surveys for scientific or educational purposes, so your own is not to look for oil to sell and make money. You are just carrying out research. You will not need to get a PEL from the government. I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yes, so that is how the PL is. And it can be revoked as well. But the person that revokes is not the commission. It can be revoked by the minister. The commission grants it, but it's only the minister that can revoke it. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I like the way you said it. That is how it should be. Praise God. Okay, so let's move on. Your name is Blessing now. Your name, Che? Oh, Favor. Yeah, I know it's yes. Okay, so please let's continue. Now let's look at the PPL again. I tried to talk about it when we met last, but I want to still go back to it again. This is a more serious arrangement. The petroleum prospecting license is a concession granted to an oil company to explore for, to prospect for oil, and when you find this oil, you can now sell it and make profits. Is that so?
Yes.
So this one is not granted by the commission, but by the Minister of Petroleum on the recommendation of the commission. That's the first thing you need to note. And I told us that one of the things the petroleum PIA has sought to do is to, I still push that in closer. I don't think my voice will be entering it very well, because I'm not shouting. Thank you. Thank you. Mbana. Can we continue, please?
Yes, sir.
One of the defects that this law has tried to cure was the unfettered powers of the minister under the first regime. Under that regime, the Minister of Petroleum had unfettered powers. Now we have curtailed those parts. You know, the minister is a civil servant. I mean, he's a politician.
Yes.
You cannot trust such an important resource to pure politics. There should be some constraints. And so what the law has now done is to commingle the office of the minister with the office of the commission and the authority. We don't want to talk about the authority now so that we don't confuse ourselves, because that has to do with midstream and what? Downstream. Yeah. So now what happens is that the commission has the experts, petroleum experts, geologists and all that. So these are the persons now that can now look and say, hey, this person can produce this oil. He has the competence and capabilities. A company may have been producing for the past 5 years, but all of its expertise is in swamp. You cannot take it to deep offshore. Are you with me? A company may have expertise in deep offshore and may not have expertise in a rocky terrain. So we look at their capabilities, their experience, and everything, and we can now recommend to the minister and say, okay, this is the person that we feel should be granted this concession. And before we can do that, there must be a bidding system. Did I say that?
Yes.
Yes, so we'll talk about the bidding system soon. So the minister grants this concession, but not arbitrarily. He must act on the recommendation of the commission. If he refuses, if they recommend and he refuses, then he must get back to them and explain why. He cannot say because he wanted to marry this man's sister, the man refused, he will not give him oil block. All those days are gone forever. What does he confer? What does the PPL confer? Please listen. First of all, it confers exclusive rights to drill, number 1, to explore for, and 3, to appraise wells. Very important. First, you can drill. When you drill, you are still looking for the oil. Is that also?
Yes.
To explore for this oil, and then to appraise a well. Yes. It's a non-exclusive, it confers non-exclusive rights to explore for petroleum within the license area, but exclusive right to carry away and dispose of crude oil or natural gas won or extracted during the drilling of exploration or appraisal wells. Exploration or appraisal wells as a result of production tests. Okay. What is the scope and duration? The scope and duration. Scope and duration. First of all, I say that the scope and duration are location what? Dependent. They are location dependent. So if it is offshore or if it is in a frontier basin, it will depend. Are you with me?
Yes.
So if it is onshore or in shallow waters, it's 350 square meters. That is the maximum that a PPL can be if it's onshore or in a shallow water, 350 square meters. If we go to deep offshore, it can be as wide as 1,000 square meters. But if it is in a frontier acreage, it can even be bigger, 1,500 frontier acreage. Is that okay?
Yes.
Then, how long? The duration is also location what? Dependent. If it is onshore and in shallow water, it's for a maximum of 6 years. If it is in a frontier acreage or deep offshore, it will be granted to you for a maximum of how many? 10. Now, these 6 years and these 10 years are divided into 2. We have what they call the IEP, Initial Exploration Period. So basically, we are giving it to you for 3 years. If it's onshore and shallow water, 3 years. IEP, Initial Exploration Period. But if you convince us that there's need to go further, we can give you 3 more years. That one is our own option. So it's called the Optional Extension Period, OEP. Is that clear? 3 years, IEP, Initial Exploration Period. We may now give you 3 more years, Optional Extension Period. If it's in a deep offshore or frontier acreage, 5 years IEP, 5 more years, OEP, good. The holder of this concession is generally bound by the provisions of the PIA and the terms of the condition. Please listen. It's generally bound, so when they have given it to you as a license, it's more like a contract you have entered into with the government. Are you with me?
Yes.
And you must comply with the terms upon which you are meant to produce the oil. Of course, most of these terms again will be geared towards ensuring that you apply standards and practices geared towards avoiding accidents. Is that also?
Yes.
And then there are a number of obligations geared towards ensuring sustainable production. Sustainable production. You will also have to commit to a work program. A work program. So in the past, because for most of these governments, they benchmark their budget to the price of petroleum, and they estimate that on a daily basis they will produce this amount of crude. It is on the basis of that estimation that they budget. So if we are going into 2023 and our father Buhari now says, I am budgeting 1 trillion naira for education. ASU has gone on strike too much, no more strike forever. So now I'm going to increase their funding, education funding to 1 trillion naira. That budget is on an estimation or a projection that the oil companies are producing this amount of petroleum on a daily basis. Because you recall that for the government funding, petroleum comprises or provides over 70% of government funding for federal government. For state government like Bayelsa, it may be as high as 98%. And so if the oil company now, that we are now depending on, so in essence we are depending on them to run government. Not to run the country is different from government. We are depending on them to run government. And when I'm talking about run government, I'm talking about paying staff salary. Is that also? Providing infrastructure, everything that government needs to do. So if these companies, if we're going to depend on them, they want to ensure that they commit to a work program. So we're giving you this oil block, but we want you to commit to producing this amount of crude oil every day. You will not stop at all, the whole of the period, except something happens, which we call force majeure, or whatever they call it. Are you clear?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm just trying to emphasize that the holder is generally bound by the PI and the terms and conditions of the license, and if he fails to comply with them, then the minister may have a right of claim against him. When I mean him, I'm talking about it. I'm talking about a company, but let's just use him. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Or his default would also be deemed to be a breach of his license. It could also be a ground for revocation. The defense, like I pointed out, is force majeure. Force majeure. So you could say there was the intervention of a supervening event, something that I could not foresee happened, like the flood we had in these parts of the country recently. There could be an outbreak of disease, God forbid, or whatever. So if these things happen, then it would be an excuse, a valid defense. And so if the concession has been granted to you for 3 years, but you could not produce because of the force majeure, the commission is authorized to extend your period. So rather than 3 years, you could extend your period for 1 or 2 years, as the case may be, but you cannot extend it for more than another 3 years. Any questions, please? Are there questions? Good. Yes, my dear.
For this, what if this 6 years has elapsed? Can they still extend it for another extra optional period?
Except the force majeure. Sorry, my dear. There's provision for extension. We will look at it soon. In, for example, your 6 years, your optional extension period is about to expire, and you have already served for. You have already covered 5 years and 11 months. You have how many months more? 1 month, and you now strike oil. You now strike oil. the commission may extend period for you. We'll look at it. But other than that, if there's force majeure, while your lease is still running, your lease hasn't expired, that stopped you from working for 2 years, then the commission may give you 2 more years, in which case you now have 8 years. Or it stopped you from working for 3 years, it may give you understand? But if it stopped you from working for 4 years, it can't give you 4 years more. It can only give you maximum of what? 3 years more. Good. Good students with a good lecturer. Okay, let's move on. So now let's look at his work. What does he do? What does he do? First of all, he must commit to a work program. He must commit, I've said that before, to a work program and to such other terms as the commission may determine. Recall that before developing countries began to step up their game, the international oil companies that ruled the world in the past, they ruled the oil and gas industry in the past, were not required to commit to a work program. I told you that. And so they could down tools at any point in time. They could hold governments to ransom by refusing to produce. You have given me the concession for 1 year, but there's no requirement for a work program. So I can say this year I'm not doing it, I will sit on my concession and do nothing. Next year when I'm in the mood I need to produce. We have left that era. Now as we are giving you the concession, we are also requiring you to commit to a work program. We will regulate you to monitor that you stick to that. And if you fail to do so, it becomes a ground for us to revoke. Is that okay?
Yes.
So you must commit to a work program. And you must also submit an annual work, submit an annual work program, which must, as a minimum, contain his work commitments. In addition, he must also submit periodic status reports. So let us appraise. That is the role of the commission, to continually appraise these reports. Number 4, he must commit to drill at least 1 exploration well. So very soon I'll put us on hold. I'll call a colleague of mine, a friend of mine who works in an oil company. He's going to explain some of these terminologies for us. Is that okay? I'll put him on speaker. Is that okay?
Yes.
Good. So, because we have a lot of geological terms in the Act, and I feel I should call the petroleum engineer to help us. So, he must commit to drill at least 1 exploration well to a minimum depth specified in the license for each period. 1 at least, you must drill. I told you about the Atala marginal field that was granted to Bayelsa State government that was revoked. Why? Because nothing was done. We could have given that concession to somebody else, probably would have done something. So you must commit that you will drill. And note, however, that for a frontier acreage, the work program that he must commit to, if they give a frontier acreage to a company, he mustn't commit to drilling an exploration well. Rather, the work program for a PPL in a frontier acreage may only entail the company to engage in geophysical work during the initial exploration period. How many years is that? How many years is that?
3 years.
Good. So during the first 3 years, a concession in a frontier basin mustn't drill an exploration well. Instead, you can just do geophysical work. When he makes a discovery, listen, when he makes a discovery during the IEP, initial exploration period, or OEP, optional extension period, he must inform the commission within 180 days, 6 months, or let's say 180 days. Notify the commission that I've made a discovery. If he considers that the discovery merits appraisal. So these words, as I call them for you, write it down, because these words we are going to ask the engineer that I'm going to call. Number one, geophysical work. Geophysical work. Edo, have you written it? The second one, exploration well. Exploration well, good. The third one, appraisal well. So you must notify the commission within how many days, my daughter? 180 days. I have discovered oil. This oil that he discovers, now the fact that you have discovered oil does not necessarily mean that it can be commercially extracted. You can discover oil in quantities that do not merit production. Very important that you understand that. Are you with me? Yes, you can discover oil. I've told you before that there's oil everywhere in the world. The problem is not whether there's oil. The problem is it commercially viable? There's oil in the north. There's oil everywhere. At least almost every country has oil. But you don't want to go and put 100 naira to get 10 naira. You can put 100 naira and even lose. So, and all that. So, if it does not interest him, I found oil but it does not interest me, he will still notify the commission. Are you with me?
Yes.
Because for a company like Shell, what they are looking for may be different from what Monipulo is looking for, because Shell is bigger. What can interest Shell could be 100 billion barrels. But 50 million barrels could interest Monipulo. Are you with me?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So if they discover oil and it doesn't interest them, they will not keep it to themselves and continue their exploration. No, notify the commission. The commission may now take that area where you found the oil and give it to another company, as the case may be. Number two, if the oil looks promising, it appears promising, then you notify the commission. The way we see this thing, it merits appraisal. It merits what? You know what appraisal is? You're explaining, you're examining more, you're appraising. So if it merits appraisal, notify the commission. If it does not interest you at all, notify the commission. If you feel that it merits appraisal, like further investigation, further work, you will seek 2 approvals. The company will seek 2 approvals. Number one, they will prepare a commitment to an appraisal program. So we want to appraise this well. We have found out we want to appraise it. Are you with me? Okay, are you with me? The way you just look like this, I will come to wonder, this thing, is it too abstract? Eh? Don't worry, when I give you my slide, you go and look at the slide, listen to the video, pray, light will come in Jesus' name.
Amen.
So if you feel we have found oil and we feel it merits appraisal, then the law says come to the commission and seek 2 permissions from it. Number one, bring an appraisal program. This is the program we want to commit to appraise this well, but the commission has to approve it. So that's the first thing we're seeking for. And a approval of your what? Appraisal what? Program. And this program is to be within 1 and 3 years. So within 1 and 3 years, we want to fully appraise this well to discover its prospects and all that. The commitment you are now making to appraise the well must be backed by a bank guarantee. So a bank must guarantee, because you have to spend a lot of money, and we have to be sure that you have the financial commitment and capacity. You know, so you have to get a bank to guarantee, so that in the event that you end up wasting our time doing rubbish, the bank will compensate us. So you have to have a commitment from a bank guarantee, a letter of credit or performance bond that has been issued by a bank acceptable to the commission. Number two, you will seek approval for an appraisal area. So you go to the commission and say, this is the area we want to appraise this oil for. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So remember that, let's assume for an onshore commission, let's assume this is a 350 50 square yard, and you have now discovered oil here that you feel merits appraisal. You found oil here, but you feel it's of no interest to you. You notify the commission. What will the commission do? Among other things, they can ask you to relinquish here, and then you'll award it to that company. Is that so?
Yes, sir.
But you have now felt that this one here is promising. So you will seek 2 approvals. Number one approval is the program, your work program, is that also?
Yes.
Which must be between 1 and 3 years. And for this work program, your commitment to this program has to be backed with what? Bank guarantee. The second approval you are now saying is that you're asking the commission to approve this area. This is what they call the appraisal area. What will the commission do? Number one, it must respond to your request within 60 days. Within 60 days. I told you in the previous class that one of the things that the PIA has done to curb corruption and excesses is to put time limits. Did I say that?
Yes, sir.
My son, what did I say about that? Yes. What is your name? Francis, what did I say about that? No, time limits. What has the PIA done with respect to time limits and guarantees? My daughter, I've listened to all your audios, have you not? You are not serious now. You look more serious than this one. Yes? You are not serious. So why are you people not serious? Unbelievable. God forbid. You mean you've not listened to all the audio I'm giving you? Listening, do you pay to listen? Don't you have a smartphone? You have not. You can even be, like this morning I was cooking beans and listening to my own audio. I was cooking beans. Running from here to here. The speaker was playing. Tarila, you hearing me? Now me teach you, now me they listen. You will not even teach, you know they listen. Me that have been teaching the course for years, I have a PhD in this thing. Oil and gas law. I still they listen. They learn. Tarila, they hear me? You were there here for, you know they listen. Unbelievable. If it was told me, I would not have believed. But I have experienced it, so I believe. You, have you listened to the You, that my beautiful daughter, have you listened to it? She said, I'm not serious. You should try. If for nothing's sake, pity Bayelsa. We are too poor. We are poor people. Pity the Niger Delta. Let's break out of this poverty that has plagued us by laziness and lack of diligence. If I was you, this thing I've been teaching, I would have listened to it 10 times. 10. Because it doesn't cost me anything. I'm bobbing my hair, I'm listening. I mean, the boss, I'm listening. This course today now, if I was a student, before the end of today, I would have listened to it 3 times. There's no way the lecturer will come that will not catch it. Nowhere. Today in company law, I had to drive some students away from the class. I gave them the link, alteration of share capital. I taught it last year. I gave them the link last week. But I entirely hearing me. Yes, give them the link. I said, this is what we will discuss today. I sent them the slide. Now just listen. Just what? They could not. So please, you people should be serious. I'll post this thing now on YouTube. All of you go there and subscribe. Go there and do what? Subscribe. If I have to drag you with me, they say, in Redeem, they say the first vision is to make heaven. The second vision is to take as many people as, who is going to redeem there? I wrote CCG. Nobody. To take as many people as possible with us. My own first vision now is to break out of poverty. I've broken out. The second vision is to take as many of you as possible with me. And the key is diligence. Is what? It's not prayer. It's not fasting. Diligence. Hard work. From year 4 now, you can get job. From this year 4. So all your mates are finishing university and looking for food to chop. You could have bought your first car. If you are diligent. I was talking to one of my students, Abadi. Who knows Abadi? I was giving him some things. I said, if you do this, before you go to law school, you have bought your car. I'm looking at you. Yeah, that is the truth. I started paying for my school fees. Year 3. Year what? Year 3. Diligence. Going to Aba, I was 19. No, 20. Going to Aba. Sometimes I go to about twice in one day. I go again. I was studying law. And my pocket was full of money. So I let me hear me. So I won't marry that I go marry. Diligence. Can we come back? Will you change? Change. So I said one of the things that this new law has done, is to put time limits for approvals. I explained that in the past, the oil and gas industry was riddled with extreme corruption. Extreme. Because those government officials that had the power to grant these approvals, they will withhold it because of what? And I even gave an example talking about Wike and River State, didn't I? Yes. Good. So those examples you should not forget. Were you not here? You refuse to listen now. So what the law has now done is to put a time limit. Respond to this person in 60 days. That is the new dispensation we are in. You see that also in Kama. If you don't respond in 60 days, it is deemed approved. If you must reject, you must give what? Reason. You can't wake up and say, I don't agree. Minister has considered. And he said, no. If you want to die, go and die. Like my governor would say in River State. As in the pedals, in the sweet them. No, not lie. You must give reason. You must give what? If not, it can be challenged. So if you give a reason and the reason is bad, you can now challenge it in court. It now means that the exercise of that discretion is no longer unfettered. That thought is brought here. That concept is brought here. So where you now apply for the approval of the appraisal area and your work program, the commission must respond to you within 60 days. If they don't, it is deemed approved. If it is approved, then you have to promptly carry out the work program. After he has now finished the work program, because remember, he saw oil in 2 places. Let's assume he saw oil in 2 places. I'm not interested. I believe there's something here. Let's appraise. So give me what? Approval. This man now gives you approval. Not more than 3 years. Go and carry out a work program. And your commitment to this work program, you back it with a bank guarantee. Is that not so? Yes. So he approved your program, he approved the area. If he refuses to respond to your application within 60 days, it is deemed approved. So let's assume either way it is approved. You go and start to produce the oil. After that maximum of 3 years, any of the following may happen. Number one, you may not listen. After appraising the well, because it's already found oil. It's not as though I've not found oil. So it's not looking for oil again. Are you with me? Yes. So after he has finished his work, he could do 3 things. Number one, I have discovered oil in commercial quantity. So I will declare a commercial discovery. That is the first. Of crude oil. Number 2, I am now declaring a significant gas discovery. Number 2, a significant gas discovery. So these are 3 things that may happen. Please listen. You may find oil in commercial quantities. You may find gas in significant quantities. Number 3, you may find oil or gas, but it's not interested anymore. So at the end of this is appraisal program, these are the 3 things you may now do. I found oil in commercial quantities. I found gas in significant quantities. I am not interested in whatever is there. He cannot come and say, I did not see oil, because he saw oil before he began to appraise. Are there questions, please? Are there questions? No, let's still continue. Tyler, where are you just going to? Okay. Beautiful. Can we proceed? Now, when he has now made a commercial discovery, please listen very well. When he has now made a commercial discovery of what? Of what? Crude oil. For the gas, he doesn't have to have found gas in commercial quantities at this stage. All he needs to find is significant discovery. If he finds oil in commercial quantity, he goes back to the commission, which will now tell him, retain this place, retain this area where you were appraising for a particular time frame, not more than 10 years. So let's assume 10 years. Retain this place for how many years? 10 years. That's the first thing it may do. Number 2, if he has found gas in significant quantities, so a significant discovery, not commercial yet, but significant, then the commission will also tell him, retain this place for again not more than 10 years. So the retention area, so this area that is now retained is called the retention area, will continue to subsist under the license until it expires, number one, or until the licensee has now made a commercial discovery of gas. I take it again, please listen. Can I continue, please? Just a minute. There's something I want to just clarify. Are there questions? Are there questions? Edotu, are you clear? My daughter, are you clear?
Yes.
No questions? I'm coming on. Just a minute or. Good. Excellent. Okay, yes. I knew that something was not as it ought to be. Thank you, Lord. Good. Yes, so please listen. Can I come back?
Yes.
Good. So if he makes a commercial discovery of crude oil, then he will go back to the commission and they'll start discussing about converting this license to a what? Upgrading it to a what? Yes, good, PML. But if what he found was a significant discovery of gas, it's not yet commercial discovery of gas, it was a significant discovery of gas, then even if this license is about to expire, remember that the maximum for onshore and shallow water is 6 years. Is that also?
Yes.
Yes, so let's assume 5 years and 11 months. 5 years and 11 months. In pursuance to the appraisal program, he now finds gas. He makes a significant discovery of gas. He now goes back to the commission and says, okay, my license is almost expiring, but I've discovered gas in significant quantity. It's not yet commercially viable. Are you with me? It's not. Instead, it is significantly viable. It is significant discovery. Then the commission will say, okay, retain this area for not more than 10 years. Are you with me?
Yes.
So the retention is only applicable when there is a significant discovery of gas, not commercial discovery of crude oil. Good. So the retention area will now continue to subsist until under the PPL, either until it expires or until the licensee now makes a commercial discovery. Either way, the moment he makes a commercial discovery, the retention area will now probably be converted to a lease. Are there questions? Good. Okay, so with respect to gas, if on the expiration of the retention period, the retention period is for how long again? How long again? Not more than 10 years. That's what we're saying now. This is the retention area. You have made commercial significant discovery of gas. You have gone to the commission. The commissioner has said, okay, go and continue looking for gas with the hope that you make a commercial discovery. When you make a commercial discovery, come to us, we'll now start talking about converting it to a lease, which is 20 years. Not be so?
Yes.
But if after this retention period we are giving you, it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, maximum 10. If you are not able to make any commercial discovery of natural gas, then the retention period will expire. Are you with me?
Yes.
And you will relinquish the area. You will relinquish this area back to the commission, and the license will expire. Are there questions? Please, so this is very technical. Follow me. I took the whole, in fact, it has taken me like hours upon hours upon hours upon hours to have a grasp, and I don't want to teach when I have not had a grasp. There's no textbook to read. No textbook. It's a new law. The last textbook we had on this course was the TKNS in 2002. When did you see my daughter? Oh, it's here. But I'm going to bring another. I'll write another one. I've already started. Yes. That's how I started my company law textbook too. The notes I was giving my students, I was upgrading it. The textbook is almost out. Now I'm going to enjoy it on a class. Can we continue? Beautiful. Okay, good. If it declares a discovery, please listen. If it declares a discovery of which he's not interested, so he may make a commercial discovery, but he's not interested. If it doesn't make a commercial discovery, the thing will expire automatically. Are you with me? Yeah. You will relinquish this area to the commission, it will expire. If he makes a discovery, it could be commercial, but he's not interested in it. Again, it will relinquish this area, and then it will expire. You will relinquish the parcels that cover the structure of such discovery. So let me explain. Yes?
If it is not interested in relinquishing it, will you be giving a different...
Excellent. You remember that this thing is 350 square. Is that not so?
Yes, sir.
Good. If it is 350 square, let's assume these are all other fields. And they carried out an appraisal program for this area because they have made a significant discovery of gas. And they extended the period for him for 2 years. If after the 2 years he makes a discovery of which he's not interested, then he will relinquish here. The license itself may not expire, he may still continue to produce. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
As the case may be, but he must definitely relinquish here. Please, let's continue. But assuming he makes a commercial discovery, he has made a commercial discovery of the crude oil and natural gas. He has made a commercial discovery. What will happen? If the license has not yet expired, then he can begin to produce. If it hasn't expired, he can begin to produce. When it expires, he now goes to the commission and says, I made a commercial discovery, I was producing, it has expired. Please upgrade my license to a what? Lease. But if it hasn't expired, start to produce. But before he produces, before he starts to produce this oil or gas that he has discovered in commercial quantity, he has to seek the approval of the commission again. So you see that you keep going for approvals. Note all these approvals. So what approval is it going for this? I may ask you the exam. Give me 5 approvals that an upstream operator may need to get from the commission. You should be able to have some grasp of it. What approval is it going for this time? It's called a Field Development Plan, FDP, Section 79. It goes for a Field Development Plan. Now I want to focus on this field and bring all my strength to bear in producing. Is that okay? Yes. You are Felix, my son. Why am I just missing your name? What is doing me today? Francis. Are you following? Are you sure? Today I'm not telling too much stories though. Try and let us focus on this law. Is it okay? Or you want me to tell more stories? So, now that you have discovered oil in commercial quantities, come back to us with a plan, a field development plan, and a work commitment. This commitment again must be backed by what? Must be backed by what? A bank guarantee. Yes. When you discovered oil that merited appraisal, you brought a commitment. You brought a work program. You said to the commission, please, I want to appraise this well. You backed it with a guarantee. Now you are through with your appraisal and you have now made a commercial discovery. You will now come back to us again with a plan. This one is a field development plan, and attach it again with a work commitment. The commission must approve both of them. And this commitment must be backed with a bank guarantee, letter of credit, as the case may be. Is that okay?
Yes.
Before the commission will approve this plan, it will evaluate it. And then it will use the following criteria. So let me just read what I have here. The commission will evaluate the technical and commercial terms of the FDP, that is the Field Development Plan, and approve it if the following conditions are met. So first of all, appraise it, evaluate it, the technical and commercial commitment. So it's not just technical, it's also commercial. Is that okay?
Yes.
And approve it if the following conditions are met. Number 1, the plan must meet the technical standards required for petroleum operations based on good international petroleum industry practices. 2, the location of the measuring point, measurement processed, and the equipment must be acceptable to the commission. 3, the plan must result or has the potential of resulting in the maximum economic recovery of petroleum from the applicable reservoir. Reservoir is well, you know now. Yeah, so that is the next one. The plan must result in maximum economic recovery. 4, it must meet specified health, safety, and environmental standards. It must provide for efficient and commercial use of facilities for midstream petroleum operations. Example, let me give you an example. Nigeria has had this issue with gas flaring of late. We have been trying to address it. And one of the things we are trying to do is to authorize third-party access. Third parties, companies that, so this is Chevron Nigeria, they have been giving this as an OML. Are you with me? The federal government can now authorize SNG, Shell Gas Nigeria, to still enter into this acreage, to take gas that Chevron would have wasted, burnt, fled, and sell it. So we now see an interconnection between a midstream company, a company that sells gas to the public, and an upstream company. Are you with me? And so what the Section 79 is saying is that it must provide for the efficient and commercial use of facilities for midstream petroleum operations. So Chevron must be able to have adequate facilities that will create a proper interconnection or interplay with between upstream and midstream. Another condition here is that it must not involve excessive capital or operating expenditure. So you are bringing a plan, and you're saying we are going to hire welders. We'll bring the welders from Korea. We'll pay them $10,000 every day. That's expensive. Can't we get welders from Nigeria? So we will look at your cost implications in your plan. It must not involve excessive capital or operating expenditure. So any company that is able to bring a plan that is reasonable, the expenditure are reasonable and workable, they are likely to be approved. In addition to all of these, the FDP must also have certain documents attached to it. Number one, it must come with an approved Nigerian content plan. Nigerian content plan. So in 2010 we had this law called the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act. I've written a book on it. How many of you have seen the book? You have not seen it, you have not read it. It's in the library. Make out time. Go and look at it. Go and look at it second semester. So the Nigerian Content Monitoring Board, the NCDMB, you know the office? Yes. One of the things they do for companies is to certify their Nigerian content plan. Every company must have a Nigerian content plan where they will write and stipulate that between 2023 and 2024, we are going to employ this amount of Nigerians, we are going to buy this equipment from Nigeria, we are going to train Nigerians. Are you with me? Everything they plan to do to advance indigenous participation in the oil and gas industry, that must be contained in a document called the Nigerian Content Plan, and the NCDMB must approve it. If NCDMB does not approve that plan, then your field development plan itself will not be approved. That's what the law is saying here. In addition to that, you must also come with what they call an EMP, Environmental Management Plan. In the event that there is an outbreak of fire, how do we plan to address it? Outbreak of an oil spill. This is our plan. Are you with me? You must have that plan. You must have what they call a D&A plan, the commissioning and abandonment plan. After the 20 years you are giving us this lease, we want to leave Nigeria, we want to abandon our operations. This is the plan we are putting in place to decommission the facilities we have set. This is what we plan to do with the mast, the pipeline. Everything must be provided for in a D&A plan. The next one, it must provide for a D&A fund. We have now set up a fund where we'll be contributing 20 naira every year for the next 20 years. So that when we eventually decommission at the end of the life cycle of our operation in Nigeria, we will not be looking for money. We already have the money. And in case we are complaining, the federal government can use that money we are putting in that fund to ensure proper decommissioning and abandonment. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
We must also commit to the elimination of routine gas flaring. So these are all the things that must be in place before we approve the field development plan. The company must commit to eliminating natural gas flaring, and it must also have a detailed program to recruit and train Nigerians in all phases of petroleum operations that it handles directly or through its agents and all that. It must also provide for scholarship schemes, internships, continuous professional development and other training requirements. It must also comply with host and communities' obligations and include a development period sufficient to construct any required infrastructure and development of the field. Are there questions, please? Are there questions? Tomorrow, we have petroleum law in the timetable now. It's in the timetable, or when do we have petroleum law in the timetable? Which time? On Thursday. You don't have timetable here?
On Thursday by 12.
Okay, 12. You want me to enter Port Harcourt late? Can we bring it down to 12, to 10? Do you have any class by 10?
Yes. They have elective. Maritime and space.
Do they come?
Yes.
Maritime and space.
It's by 10 o'clock. That's
Those ones are electives now.
It's 10 o'clock. Petroleum also there. Petroleum is not 12. It's 10. It's one time to the place.
No, wahala. So let's work with 10. Let's work with 10. Is it okay? Okay. Please, can we continue? Good. Extension of the license. Now, can the license be extended? That is the question. Can the license be extended? Yes. The Petroleum Profits and PPL may be extended where the holder establishes and secures approval for an appraisal area. I've already pointed that out. Not more than how many years? Not more than how many years?
10 years.
10 years now, yes. So the commission has now said, this area, go and appraise it because you have discovered oil. We feel it merits what? Appraisal. So go and continue to appraise it. So even though your PPL should not pass 6 years, but you are still continuing your appraisal, you are not done. The end of this appraisal is to discover what?
Commission.
Yes. I don't know, we were going there, but somehow you came back. So the end of appraisal is to discover oil in commercial quantity. Is that so?
Yes.
So pending when we have now discovered, you have already marshaled all your resources to this field and you are still continuing your work. We can extend this period for you, no more than 10 years. Go and continue your appraisal. Is that okay?
Yes.
So we can extend it to you where you have secured appraisal for an appraisal area, or we can also extend it to you where you have not made a commercial what? Discovery. You have made a commercial discovery. Normally, when you make a commercial discovery, the thing that comes to our mind now is to convert it to a what? Lease. But that will take time. That will take a process. While we are still processing all that, we will not leave that thing in abeyance. Is that so? So, oh yeah, okay, your lease your license has expired. Take 2 more years while we are processing the lease. Is that okay? Good. So the license will be extended until the lease is granted. The holder of the holder of the retention area shall within 2 years after declaring the commercial discovery also submit an FDP. So whenever you make a commercial discovery, submit an FDP, field development plan, to the commission, which shall give its final decision to approve or disapprove within 180 days. And of course, if you fail to do that, it will be deemed what? Granted. Let's move on. Okay, I think we can pause now for me to call my colleague. No, let's play the lecture. Yeah, we call him and just discuss with him briefly. Where are you? Want to check this thing? Come and check my son. Is this still going on?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. The battery is low. Don't worry, we'll soon finish. It's not expired. Okay, when it's done, it doesn't video well. Really? Interesting. Put it on the table. Thank you, son. I love you. Your mates from law school, have you heard from them? Did they pass?
Yes, sir.
All of them?
Yes.
Thank God. Thank God. One of my sons, I'm trying to, it's like he did not pass. As I asked him, what's your result? He said, I've not checked. That I've not checked. You know, I believe, I don't think he passed. It's well, though. Nobody should fail in this dispensation. Nobody. You know, you can, okay, I didn't make first class or I didn't make a 2-1, but not fail. No, nobody. Are you with me?
Yes.
Fail is not easy. They have made it so hard for you to fail, and if you fail, you have a problem. Most of these exams, 45% you have passed, 50% you have passed. No, it means to fail 50. Tell yourself, how can I fail 1, 2, 3, 50? Okay, let's go on. So the PML, Petroleum Mining Lease. So this is the highest concessionary right that can be granted to any oil company in Nigeria now, we have reduced it. I told us under the 1914 regime, the 30 and 40 years as the case may be, and under the Petroleum Act it was 20. That 20 years concept has been brought here. Are you with me?
Yes.
Good. So the PML is granted to the holder of a PPL who makes a commercial discovery of crude oil or natural gas or both. If you have not made a commercial discovery, don't come to us. And that stakeholder must also have satisfied the conditions imposed on the license. So when you had the PPL, you are not paying tax. The government said pay tax every month. Sorry, when you sell oil, give us our own. Because our tax we used to run the government. You were not giving us tax, even though you made commercial discovery. Now you want to convert it to a lease, we will not convert. Why? You were not fulfilling the former terms, one of which was to pay what? I'm just giving an example. So it's not just that you made a commercial discovery, you must also have certified the conditions imposed on the license. Number 3, you must have received the approval for an FDP. So before you are granted this PML, commercial discovery, satisfied all the conditions of your former license, and the commission has approved your FDP. It is usually granted to companies through an open and transparent bidding process, and the lease may also include an appraisal phase. It may also include a work program requirement aimed at enhancing ongoing production. Thank you, Lord. Can we continue, please? Yes. So, I have a petroleum prospecting license, and I've been given this 350 square meters. I've made a commercial discovery here, here, and here. I want to now upgrade it to a lease. 1, 2, 3 can be given to me as one lease, or 1 can be given to me as a lease, as a lease, as a lease. So if it is divided, I can now have 3 leases. So the end of this prospecting work is to make a commercial discovery with the intention of it being upgraded to a lease, which will give me a long time of how many years? 20 years, which can be renewed for another 20 years and another 20 years, as the case may be. So the holder of a PPL who applies for conversion to a PPL may propose that a separate lease be granted for each commercial discovery to which its concession relates prior to the expiration of the license, and the license will continue for the remaining areas to which it relates for the duration provided in it. So you have not found, please listen, you have not found commercial, you have not made commercial discovery here. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
You have made here. So we can give you a lease here, 1, 2, 3. PPL 1, PPL 2, PML 1, 2, and 3. You have 3 leases. Why the PPL? PPL 50. So let's assume this was PPL 50. Out of this PPL 50, we have now carved out how many leases? 3 PMLs. So we now have three leases, and this license will continue for this area. I hope that is clear enough. Good people, good lecturer. And so the commission may approve the proposed area, and it will propose the area to which the PML should relate by acting on an independent engineering report, which is binding on the commission. So before making this proposal, you will have to rely on a report by an engineering report. And whatever the engineer says will be binding on the commission. Good, okay. Thank you, Lord. What does the PML confer? It confers exclusive rights on its holder to develop and produce petroleum within the lease area. That's the first thing. To drill, exploration, and appraisal wells in the area. And it confers a non-exclusive right to carry out petroleum exploration operations. The holder must have committed to develop and produce a commercial discovery in accordance with the plan, and or to restart or continue production to which the lease relates. So basically, like I told you, when you are appraising you are still doing a lot of investigation. You have found oil, but you want to be sure that it is commercially viable. When you are given the lease, to a large extent, you have now discovered oil in commercial quantities, which you may have been producing while it was a license. Are you with me? While it was a license, and so you are just continuing. Or you may have stopped production. The lease may have been granted to Shell. Now Shell has now left Nigeria, God forbid. Let's assume they leave Nigeria, but God forbid. And then that OML or that PPL is now given to another company. What it does is to continue or to restart production as the case may be. Are there questions? Good. Remember I told you you could also renew a PML for another 20 years, and after that 20 years, you may still renew it for as long. You can just continue 20 years as the case may be. But for that to happen, please note that Section 87, the holder must, the Commission may renew PMLs that continue to produce in paying quantities for one or more successful additional terms of not more than 20 years, not more than 20, to be less. And the concessionaire or the PML holder must have met its financial obligations, must have written to the Commission not less than 12 months before the expiration. So the current 20 years is about to expire, not more than 12 months, not less than 12 months before the expiration. You will have written indicating your interest in what? In what? Good, in renewing, and the Commission will renew if the leaseholder fulfills its obligations relating to the area, fully met its financial obligations, and is not in default in any obligation or condition, and has discharged all operational obligations in compliance with applicable rules and regulations. Okay? Yeah. I think we can now. Okay, so we want to look at the bidding process, the process for acquiring this concession. But before we do that, let's look at general rights. Sections 91, Section 90 and 91 deals with general rights. General rights, these are rights that PPL holders, PML holders have. That's why I call them general rights. Number one is the right of way. First thing, right of way to lay, for the laying, operation and maintenance of gathering lines, telephone lines, power lines, and other similar lines through or across areas as they may require. When you are given this concession, you have to have a right of way. You are in year 4 now. Have you done easements and profits apprehended?
No, sir.
Are you in first semester?
Yes, sir.
Who is teaching you land law?
3 lecturers.
Have you met with them today?
No, sir.
Not one lecturer?
Yes, sir.
He said no. Okay, have you met with them this semester?
Yes.
How many times cumulatively?
It's not before the strike and after the strike.
Excellent. So they keep coming. Well, there's one man called Mr. McBerry.
Yes.
Good. He comes
Yes.
every week.
Yes.
What of Mr. Enoru?
Yes.
Who else? Professor Derry. He doesn't come now.
Yes.
He has come on.
Yes.
It's alright. So how are you finding the course? Are you understanding what the people are teaching?
Yes, sir.
You have to. Those are very strong hands. And Mr. McBerry was my senior in UST. These are strong hands. But if you still have issues, feel free to still connect with Professor Derry. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so one of the things you will do, I believe that should be in second semester, is what they call easements. And easements, these are basically a right of way. I may not have right of access. Right of access, right of way. Are you with me? Yes, so if I have a land here, I should be able to have access to come out of that land. Even though I don't own the land where I'm having the access to. So you cannot sell somebody land and say, okay, that's your land, I'm going to build. Are you with me? Yes. Some wicked people, what they want to do, when they want to force you to sell your land, you say you will not sell, no problem. They just buy all the adjoining lands and build around you. And force you to sell. And most Nigerians don't like problems, so they'll just sell, provided the pay is good. but it can be challenged. I don't know if you understand. Because if you, a property rights are reserved for us in the Constitution. That should be section 44. Everybody should have a right to own property. Is that also?
Yes.
And to enjoy it. And so if I have a property and you deprive me of the right to enjoy it, you can as well have infringed on my right to own property. And one of the ways you can do that is through not allowing me to have a right of what? Access. I said all of that to bring us here, that under this law, is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, a person who is given a PPL or a PML will have a right of way to lay pipelines and a lot of infrastructure that he needs to carry out his work. Is that okay? Yes, that's the first thing I want to know. Now, that notwithstanding, the Commission may reserve a right of way or other rights over an area to which a concession relates if it considers that the same is necessary for the laying of the aforementioned lines. Any rights so reserved shall continue for the benefit of any person to whom the Commission may subsequently grant. You know, so there are some other, so these are general rights that the PML and PPL holders will have, but in some instances, the Commission itself may reserve one or two areas for a third party. Is that okay? You look at sections 90 and 91. Very well. Another right they have is to enter and remain on land subject to the license or lease. So the first right is a right of way. The second one is a right of entry. They have a right to enter and remain on land subject to the license or lease. Thirdly, they have a right to do such other things that are not prohibited by law. Prohibited by law. Or by their contract. That notwithstanding, they must comply. Thank you, Lord. They must comply with applicable town or country planning laws, which regulate the construction, alteration, repair, or demolition of buildings. But let's talk about the bidding process. We have 14 minutes more. And then we'll call it a day for today. And then I'll call my friend. For in your presence there is healing divine. Okay, can I go on?
Yes, sir.
I told you now that the new idea now, the new process is a transparent bidding process. That's the first thing we want to still emphasize, that you cannot grant petroleum concessions arbitrarily to anybody of your choice. There must be, first of all, there will be blocks that are available for auction. That's the first thing. There will be oil blocks that are available for what? Auction. And these blocks will be available because, number one, a concession granted to a company may be revoked. If it is revoked, we have to give it to another person. Is that not so? In giving it to another company, we have to auction it. In the past, what the federal government used to do is that if they are not comfortable, they revoke your license, they give it to another company, or they give it back to NNPC. All that has ended. If it is revoked, auction it. Don't give it to NNPC. NNPC does not have any right, any exclusive right anymore. Number two, you could surrender your lease. So apart from revocation, you could surrender. Is that not so? Yes, I'm surrendering, I'm not doing it again. Another thing we could do, you could relinquish. Relinquishment is similar to surrender, but for surrender, you are giving up everything. Relinquishment is only a part. Are you with me? The land is too big. For example, I told you that originally Shell was given the whole of Nigeria as a single oil block. But towards the ending part of the 1950s, it began to relinquish. It increasingly relinquished its concessions in order to focus on the more prolific Niger Delta. So all its rights over Onitsha, Benue, all those areas, forget about that. Let's focus on the Niger Delta. So if you relinquish an aspect of your block also, then the commission may put it up for what? Auction. Is that okay?
Yes.
Beautiful people. So when blocks are available like this, then first thing you now have to do is to call for bids. You invite the public to bid for these blocks. And this invitation, you know, is not an offer, but it's an invitation to what? To treat. Good. So you're inviting companies to make offers. You're inviting them to treat. How is this done? It should be done in accordance with the procedure that you must publish on your website. The company must have what they call guidelines, licensing guidelines. Is that okay? Yes, you must have licensing guidelines, and you must also publish a criteria upon which these companies will use to apply. That criteria must be published on your website. Everybody should see it. So the commission and the authority are now mandated to have websites. Website is no longer an option. Anybody who is still thinking we are still in analog will soon be faced. It's Old Testament. We have Old Testament students, Old Testament lecturers. In a normal environment, any lecturer will say, oh, I don't know how to use all these gadgets. They will sack him. Is that not so? Oh, computer, oh, I don't know how to use it. Just sack him. But here, people are even proud of people saying it. I don't know all these gadgets. Hey, a student who says doesn't know how to use computer should not be here. You should be expelled. Whether you are 60, we should send you away. But this is where we are now. The Lord will help us in Jesus' name. So number one, publish it in your website. Number two, publish the procedure in at least 2 international financial newspapers and in 2 national newspapers with wide coverage. Beyond that, the Commission will also prescribe what they call the minimum pre-qualification criteria. So you have a pre-qualification criteria. Companies with 10 years experience, companies that have this level of financial capacity, companies that have this. So that is a pre-qualification criteria. You are not yet qualified, but you are pre-qualified. So when you look at it, you not even bother, you don't have it. Are you with me? Good. So if they say we want to employ lawyers, and then the lawyers, people to apply must have a 2-2, and you made a pass, you're already disqualified. So that is the pre-qualification and all that. So it will prescribe a minimum pre-qualification criteria of the prospective bidder in terms of technical and financial requirements and previous experience. Hello, why are you happy? Why are you just happy today? Are you sure you're not mocking me?
No, sir.
We're almost done, 8 minutes more. So now, when these companies now apply for this oil block, we now have to have what they call a bid criteria that we'll use to determine who we are choosing. A bid what? Criteria. And for this bid criteria, we can use a single criteria or usually a combination of criteria. A single criteria could be, we chose this company just because of their financial competence. We did not look at their technical capacity or their employment or safety record. We looked at their financial criteria. So we could use any of the following, please listen. We could use any of the following criteria to choose. Number one, full payment of a signature bonus. Number one, are you ready to pay? Any company is ready to pay fully. 2, a royalty interest. 3, a profit split or profit oil split. 4, a work program commitment or any other parameter as may be defined. So any of these criteria can be used to select a company. But that is the first, a single bid criteria. But the usual thing is that you combine a number of criteria and now begin to give points. In the end, you will amass all the points and say you have the highest points, so you are the winner. Are you with me? Yes. So royalty interest, Edo to score what she's ready to pay. She scored 87%. And profit split, profit oil spill, what she promised to give the government in terms of profit splitting. She promised to give us 80%, she will take 20%. That is very good. This one promised to give us 60%, she will take 40%. So for profit split, we are giving her 90%. 90 points. The first one was how many points? 87 points. Now, work program, we look at our work program commitment. She said every year, if our weekend self should be working on Sunday, self, you know, and should be producing this volume of crude every day. Give her 95%. Are you with me? In the end, we will now amass all these criteria and join it with every other person's own. If she's the highest, we give her the oil block. So the second one is that you could combine the bid criteria. Please listen very well. Though. Okay, so the bidding process may be done physically or electronically. It must be open, transparent, and competitive. It must be open to the public and conducted in the presence of representatives from NEITI, Nigerian Extractive Initiative, Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NEITI. So their representative must be there while we are conducting the bid. We'll bring representative from Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Petroleum. People's eyes are on ground to monitor what you are doing. So concessions are to be granted based on a fair, transparent, and competitive bidding process and in compliance with the PIA and regulations made under it, and in compliance with licensing round guidelines issued by the Commission for each round. The award shall be by an open, transparent, competitive, and non-discriminatory bidding process conducted by the Commission, which may periodically publish these licensing round plans. And on the completion of the bid round process, the Commission will determine the winner, and then on the basis of the bid, predetermined parameters, and then notify the Minister of Petroleum, who will now append the signature and approve. And it must approve within 90 days, otherwise it will be deemed what? Granted. So I will end with this for today. Tomorrow we'll continue. Exceptions to the bidding rule. Exceptions to the bidding rule. I told you, now all oil blocks must be bidded for. However, there are exceptional instances when you may not have to bid. Number one, under section 71, subsection 5, for example, a PL holder may be entitled to select and be granted a PPL before the termination of his tenure. That is the first. If I've been given a petroleum exploration license, I have now seen oil, I am automatically entitled to what? To what? PPL. That one is not big, you will not do an auction. Number two, under section 74, sub 3, the federal government of Nigeria may, for strategic purpose and in return for substantive benefits to Nigeria, direct the Commission to negotiate and award a PPL or PML to a qualified investor identified in a bilateral or multilateral agreement or treaty, in return for substantive benefits to Nigeria. Very important. So China is coming here and they want to build a super highway railway infrastructure that will link Calabar to Lagos. Are you with me? Yes, and so it will be of substantive benefit for the transport network of the country. In return, federal government can direct the Commission, so this is a political move now, and say, hey, China National Oil Company, CNOOC, give them an OPL 245, PPL 245 as the case may be. So that is the next one. And it must be in pursuance to a treaty, multilateral or bilateral as the case may be. In the same vein, the third one, the holder of a PPL who has made a commercial discovery of crude oil or natural gas will automatically be entitled to PML without also any form of auction. And lastly, under section 93 sub 2, the holder of an OML may, upon relinquishment of some aspect of his leased area, and convert the remainder which it does not relinquish to PPL. So we'll talk about some transition provisions, in the course of this lecture. One of which is that I told you that until the last OPL or OML dies, the Petroleum Act is still alive. Is that so? Yes. However, somebody who has an OPL or OML under the 1968-69 regime may go to the commission and say, I want to benefit from all the tax benefits available to PPLs under this new regime. Because under the OPL regime, the tax was higher. Let's assume the tax was 80%. But PPLs now are enjoying 75%. Please, can I convert from OPL to PPL? The commission will say, yes, you can. But when you were OPL, you had 1,000 square kilometers. Is that so? Is that so?
Yes, sir.
But you have to relinquish half of it. So 500 will now belong to us, which we can auction. 500 you can still keep. That 500 now that is converted from an OPL to PPL or OML to PML, as it is may be, will not be what? Will not be what? Auctioned. It will not be bidded for. So these are exceptions. I hope this is clear enough. Good. So what I want you to now do, I think we'll call it a day. It's 12 o'clock exactly. I've been talking for, I came here 2 minutes past 10. So I've been talking for the better part of 2 hours straight, non-stop. And the previous class I talked for 1 hour and 30 minutes or thereabouts. Were you in the class?
Yes.
The company law class?
No, I thought I didn't have my lesson.
No, I'm not on the company law class. So I'm tired. So now look at what will happen. You will go back and read again. Any course you are reading, please listen, that is primarily statute based. The first place you should read is the primary document. The primary source is the statute. Is that not so? What the textbooks and the articles and the courts do is to interpret and expatiate on it. But you have a right to access the document and read it. So what I will advise you now to do, go back and read this chapter, part 1 of chapter 2. Part 1 of chapter 2. And part 1 and part 2. So we are looking from section 66 down to about section 111. 111 or thereabout. Read it thoroughly. You read like 4 or 5 times. Then with what I have tried to explain, it will begin to make more sense. And then in addition to that, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
You will also look at yeah, so let's call my friend. Yes, my son, please do.